Happy Thursday, everybody! Welcome to another edition of Fire Up Florida. Am I loud enough? I don't know. I'll let you be the judge. Rod Peterson, my co-host here tonight. We have a hockey show. We do this every Thursday, although next week we're going to be doing it Monday for the Sports Exchange because I am not competing with Thanksgiving. And if anybody thinks I'm going to do that, no way. No chance, no way, no Jose, or whatever. I don't care what language. We're not competing against Thanksgiving. So Rod and I are going to do this bad boy on Monday on the Sports Exchange. We'll list the time when it becomes more available. So with that said, okay, Rod, welcome back from Vancouver, British Columbia. I know you had a productive trip covering the Grey Cup, which we'll get to shortly.
Great to be back. Great to be anywhere in this business, Scott. Good to see you and Candy and all the viewers.
Great to have you, Rod. You've been a fixture on this show, and I'm so proud that you're one of the best additions that we've had to our platform, and I am proud to be working with a iconic guy from you north of the border. Now I got to make sure you're iconic south of the border. Okay, and I'm working on that. But at any rate, yeah, Mr. Joshua Thor is in now. What's going on? Best show in South Florida Tribune, and that is final. Hey, you know what, Joshua? We're not going to go ahead and debate that, pal. You can put that in there 9 million times, and I'll read it with my voice. Testing. Yeah, you're testing. All right. All right, but anyways, title of the show is Fire Up Florida, and we're talking about Winnipeg Jets grounded in Florida. Why? A few weeks ago, the Jets were flying high, but when they came back to Florida, they were flying low. So we'll talk about what happened. The Winnipeg Jets came to the Sunshine State and lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning on Thursday night, and then the Florida Panthers beat them 5-0 on Tuesday night. Or let's see, when was that? We had Saturday night. Excuse me, I had the days mixed up. So we had Thursday night a 4-1 loss out at Amalie Arena, 5-0 over at Amerit Arena. Is that what they call it now? Amerit Bank, I think. 5-0, and then on Tuesday night the Jets ended up beating the Panthers 6-3. And yes, you know what, Josh, thanks for bringing that up. We're going to get to that in a moment. We appreciate you putting that in the chat room. But all right, Rod, let's talk about what happened with the Winnipeg Jets. We were riding them pretty high. They were winning like 13, 15 in a row. And all of a sudden they came down to earth when they came here to Florida.
Yeah, that was Saturday night when I was in Vancouver. That was the night before the Grey Cup game. So I wasn't at Amerit Bank Arena, but Serena was, my wife and podcast co-host from Cats and Bolts. And she said, and anybody that's watching right now can agree or disagree, she said it was a much closer game than 5-0 Panthers. But Scott, if you look at the standings going into the weekend, Florida and Winnipeg were the top two teams in the National Hockey League. And Saturday night, the Panthers skated rings around them. However, Tuesday night, they met in Winnipeg. They're calling it the revenge game, Jets Revenge. There's a wonderful column in the South Florida Tribune, Wednesday's edition, about that game, which the Panthers, I should say the Jets turned the tables and won 6-3. There were a pair of empty net goals at the end of the game, which kind of made the score lopsided. But basically, if this was a Stanley Cup final, hockey fans across the continent are saying, sign us up. The game Tuesday in Winnipeg was fantastic. I didn't see the one here, but Winnipeg and Florida split.
Well, you know, it kind of reminds me a little bit of this, Rod. We just got off of Edmonton in Florida, right? Correct? Canada versus the United States. All of a sudden, Winnipeg is playing really good. United States and Canada again. This time it was Florida against Winnipeg. Everybody knows full well that if there's a Hollywood such an ending in this particular sport, they want to see Winnipeg and Florida later in the year. People, you're going to have to wait for that a little while, at least until 2025, middle of the year. But it kind of gives you that feeling, though, where you have two teams that are winning, and they're winning a lot of points at the top of their conferences, and they're battling as though it is a Stanley Cup.
Well, I love when life plays out like what we forecast. 2 weeks ago, I wrote the column in your newspaper, your publication, South Florida Tribune, saying this Winnipeg-Florida rivalry, these viewers here watching tonight know the story. Paul Maurice, Florida's coach, stepped down December 16th. I remember it because it was my birthday, 2021, off Winnipeg's bench. He said, this isn't working. They need a new voice. I'm out. And he got criticized considerably for that, Scott, for stepping down in Winnipeg. Never thought he'd coach again. And it was the next summer that he got a call from Bill Zito, and the rest is history. All the way to the 2024 Stanley Cup Final, Game 7, June 24th at Amerit Bank Arena. Panthers win 2-1, win it a Game 7. Rewatching the national television audience after the game, they hand Paul Maurice has got the cup over his head, hands it off, and goes, if I could have one thing, it's for the Winnipeg Jets to be the next team to win the Stanley Cup. And now they might meet in the Stanley Cup. Do you think he would take that back? It'd be a hell of a story if those two teams met in the Stanley Cup final.
No question about it. Well, we've seen crazy ironies in this business, and there's no reason to think that wouldn't be one of them. All right, Katie, let's go rapid fire in the chat room, okay? And start. We're up at the top of Joshua Jordan. I'm sure he gets all the airtime that this guy can handle. All right, so we got the testing part. Yeah, it works. Okay, looking good. Rod, cool background. George Boomerus. It's shame Ovechkin is out 4 to 6 weeks. Yeah, that was a developing story. We're going to get to that more on Monday, though, Rod, that Alex Ovechkin is out 4 to 6 weeks. And yes, they bounced back the next game. Am I reading fast? That can't win them all. Well, evidently they can't. Wasn't close at all, in my opinion. Rod, are you covering tonight's game? No, he's with me, Josh. I mean, maybe knows what he'll be doing. Your version of covering things, Josh, is a little different than anybody else that has a pad of paper, a notebook, and a tape recorder, but that's okay. At least you're trying to make an attempt to do it. So, all right, that's a good question. Keep it up for a minute. What's your favorite meal in Canada, Vancouver?
Well, it's steak anywhere you can go, but I often have a rule. I don't order steak by the ocean. I don't order safe seafood when I'm in a landlocked location. So in Vancouver, I had the seafood medley. Scott, here's the thing.
Yeah.
When we go out, you had wings, which it
Mhm.
took you an hour to eat because you were talking. You were being the Motor City Madmouth. I can't even remember what I had. Why do I remember what you had, but I don't remember what and your wife had steak.
Right.
But I'll be found in Florida, Vancouver, ordering a seafood medley platter because I'd like a little bit of everything.
Hey, Rod, let me tell you something. Let me give you a little bit of history about wings, okay? I'm probably the slowest wings eater on the planet.
I noticed. I noticed.
But they're good. They're tasty. It depends on how you put the sauce on them. They're really good. And they have a wet nap. I'll tell you, I eat everything fast, but them. It doesn't matter if it's at Duffy's, Hooters, Flanagan's. I eat those things and I love them. In fact, I had them earlier this week. All right, Katie, keep to the chats. Joshua Doors fasting typer, then I can go ahead and talk. Again, that takes a lot to do, but he's doing more power to him. All right, Brass Bonanza. I like this one. Okay. Winnipeg loves Pomo and glad he's had success. I don't know anything about it. Maybe you can help me on that one. But okay, what else?
No. If I may, I appreciate Brass Bonanza tuning in. He's watching in Winnipeg, and he's saying all of Winnipeg loves Pomo. That's Paul Maurice's nickname, and he was there for 9 seasons in Winnipeg and thought, very highly of. And listen, you and Candy have a wonderful marriage. I've been divorced twice. And I get it. It was a divorce in Winnipeg. Paul was like, this isn't working. I'm out. And both sides have gone on to great things. Paul won a Stanley Cup in Florida. The Jets have the #1 team in the NHL. I wonder how that will play out if they meet in the Stanley Cup final, though. There won't be a lot of love for Pomo then. But that's explaining his comment. And thanks for tuning in.
And you know what? I'm going to this chat because this woman is one of my all-time favorite people, and I am so glad she's in the chat room. Let me tell you, if there's a woman that deserves a bigger hug other than my other half, it's Jennifer Lee Cobb. This woman fights so hard for Parkinson's disease, and I love Jennifer. Hi, Scott. So great to see you. Hi from St. Louis. Can't wait to see you, Jen. I don't know if I'll be able to go ahead and drive much because of all my, health issues, but I'll have you drive me around, and I guarantee we'll have a good old time. And let me tell you, Rod, what Jennifer Lee Cobb does to raise money for Parkinson's awareness is unbelievable. I've had her on my show on No Limits before. We talked about Muhammad Ali. And if there's a more genuine individual than Jennifer Lee Cobb, go out there and find it because this woman means everything in the world. And I'm just so proud to be around Jen. And besides Jen, guess what? Okay. I'll bring you on the show, but we got to get on the phone soon, okay? And I'm looking forward to making that call sooner than later. So, Jen, I love you, sweetheart. Looking forward to talking to you soon. Oh, thanks so much. Thank you, too. I don't get too emotional, but bring her on. I might be somewhat of a nice guy. Somewhat. Don't pull it too much.
I don't believe it. Yeah, I don't believe it.
I agree. That's why you're my co-host, because you've already gone ahead and figured it out. I can clash with you in a good, friendly brother way, and you can handle it. Great stuff. Really? Seriously? I'm having fun. All right. What else we got up here? Okay. Let's see. You getting them up there, Candace? Oh, thanks so much. Good evening. All right. What else we got? Absolutely, Scott wanted nothing to do with the hockey show, especially Panthers focus, but we made it happen. No, you didn't make it happen. Rod Peterson and I made it happen. If I can't create a hockey show with undoubtedly the best damn hockey announcer guy in Canada, then it ain't going to be made. So Rod Peterson is a reason that there is a hockey show, and I'm happy as hell that he's my co-host, period. And as Blaze Wills would say, that is final. And I'm looking forward to getting back on his show as well. You wouldn't have been approached, Rod, without our influence. All right, Joshua, I'll tell you what I'll do. I can't do it over here. Pat yourself on the back and say, okay, we agree with you. But I'm not patting yourself on the back to the computer, because if I knew how to do that, Rod and I, Serena, Candy, we'd be retired in Hawaii. We're not. We're not that wealthy enough. All right. Good stuff. Love the active chat room. Thanks, John. Can't thank you enough for being in here, sweetheart. All right. Onwards we go. And then we have a station break, and I'm getting louder by the day. And by the way, just to know that Fire Up will be next at the top of the hour. Candy Ebling, Pensman Sports, Jeremy Ballrick, and Ralph Williams will be on the call with that one. And again, as I mentioned earlier in the show tonight, hockey will be on Monday night under the Sports Exchange. So my goal is to get at least George Eichhorn there. If not, Rod and I will do it like we always do anyway. So Rod, let me ask you a question. Did you know that on November 13th, 1984, that Bernie Nichols becomes the first player in NHL history to score a goal in all 4 periods of a game?
Oh, sure. Of course I knew that. They teach that in school in Canada, Scott. And Bernie Nichols is a very dear friend of mine. Broadway Bernie Nichols, number 9 with the Los Angeles Kings. Great guy. 73-goal season, by the way, he once had.
Well, just like to throw a little fact out there, so even though you knew it, I don't have to stump you all the time. It's called an FYI. You know what the FYI means? It means that the people in the audience are going to learn something, and I guarantee our objective here on the show is I want to educate, learn, and entertain, and that's what the whole idea is. And with that said, you know what? Candy Ebling is going to give everybody an opportunity to educate what a station break is. Take it away, Candy.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome. The South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book late last year, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by your host, Scott, the Motor City Mad Mouth Morganroth. Talks about his 40-plus years in the industry and how it has changed. Old school versus new school media. It is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google, and Apple Books. Get your copy today. It's a great gift idea, and the holidays are approaching, so go get your copy today. You can also find a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where both these fine gentlemen write for us. Check out their columns. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. If you see the red subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner, that means you have not subscribed to us yet. I do not understand why you haven't, but please do so. Monday nights, we talk baseball. Tuesday nights, we talk football. Wednesday and Thursday nights, you never know what we're going to be talking about, but we always talk. Typically, we talk hockey on Thursday nights. Next week, it's going to be Monday night because we're all going to wishing you all a very happy Thanksgiving. Don't eat too much, or wait, that's the day you can eat as much as you want. If you'd like to advertise with us, call Scott 954-304-4941. If you want to be a guest on the show or have any show ideas, please email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Okay, back to you, Scott.
All right, thanks, Candy. I enjoy the chat room today. All right, back to Joshua Door. We've got a couple more good ones up there, and let's go right to it. I think I'll stick to this show from now on. Josh and the guys seem more welcome here. Good choice, Josh. We do the best we can. I'd like to see Rod do a station break again. No, don't hold your breath. Although if he really wanted to, he could always read the bottom ticker, and we'll let him try it one time. Yeah, Candy definitely a replaceable shot. Wrote a book. That's true. No factual error there. I wonder if Rod knows what mini Scott he sits under the press box and does play-by-play from his seat. Oh, I have a feeling he's referring to himself. I don't know. But I'll tell you one thing I do want to mention before we go any further. There had been big news this week, and we're going to follow up on it a little bit on Future Flyer of Florida. Tom Herman was relieved of his duties from Florida Atlantic University. We're going to talk about that, Rod, in a couple of weeks. I have a clip from him at the USF game, so I'm going to wait for a couple of weeks to bring that on. I got to know Tom Herman really well, Rod. One of the nicest guys that you'll ever meet. I even gave him a Motor City Mad Mouth hat. He treated me so well in his press conferences. Let's face the reality. The FAU job is not an easy gig, being a mid-major. The facilities aren't as good as a lot of the Power 4 schools, but I'm going to tell you, Tom Herman, I love you, and I hope you get a great job. And I know you'll never forget me because I got a hat that'll make darn sure that you won't. So and you've been to a few games. They've had a tough season for sure.
Well, 2-7 as we sit here now, right? And they're home on Saturday to Charlotte in their final home game of the year. And to be honest, I was a little surprised when the news came down. Maybe we shouldn't have been at 2-7, but he made the move, right? Fired the defensive coordinator and had the offensive line coach. Thought those moves had been made, but the Owls higher ups not fooling around. Obviously, you can't imagine you were surprised by this.
No, I wasn't. The reason why I'm not surprised by it, Rod, is I almost felt by the tone of his voice at that press conference, he was tired, he was frustrated, and I could just see it in his face. Rod, when we're in this business as long as we are, darn well that you can tell by body language. And if there was body language that really tipped my hand that I have a feeling I'm seeing this guy for the last time, it was on that particular night. So there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. We're not going to go ahead and get into that. I know Joshua Dora wants to mention that Andrew Brunette will be the next to get sacked. Perhaps, but we'll talk about that at a later date. But I don't mind putting it in there because it is a hockey note that probably is not a matter of if, it's probably a matter of when. We'll continue on to the next topic, okay? That obviously, and Andrei Vasilevskiy makes history with his 300th win in a 4-1 victory over the Winnipeg Jets. That's the one I talked to, but it was Vasilevskiy that made history with his 300th win, playing 490 games, besting the previous benchmark by Jacques Plante with 521 games played. Plante held the record for 61 years and 326 days, and he's the guy that also invented the face mask. But before I let you talk, let me tell you a little story about Jacques Plante. Many, many years ago, there was a hotel and a restaurant called the Penalty Box Lounge on Sunrise. It's long gone since. I got to meet Jacques Plante, and I wrote a story on him, and we talked about the face mask. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. I don't know if you've ever met him, but Jacques Plante invented that mask, and I'll tell you, a lot of goaltenders are thankful that they still have a face. So what are your thoughts about what Andrei Vasilevskiy did in the time frame that he did? Because here's the thing, that record, and I repeat, lasted 61 years and 326 days.
Well, I can't say all goalies are good guys. What I will say is I'm not surprised that Jacques Plante's a good guy. I know some goalies that aren't good guys, but I've never met him, so kudos to you for that. You know what's interesting about that?
What's that?
The little cat and mouse game between Andrei Vasilevskiy and Sergei Bobrovsky. Bobrovsky's nickname is the Big Cat. Bobrovsky is the starting goalie for the Cats.
Right.
And it was only a couple weeks ago that Bob got his 300th win, and he was the first Russian goalie to do it. And then 2 weeks later, Vasilevskiy becomes the second Russian goalie to do it and hit 300 wins. Like, it's so rare that it had never happened before, then it happens twice in 2 weeks. That's what I think about that story.
Okay, well, that's good stuff. You ought to know it. Cover them. They both got 300 wins.
That's what I do.
Near 300 wins. You keep riding up. You may be headed to Toronto, home of the Hockey Hall of Fame. All right, we'll continue on, but back to your sport in Canadian football. You got to acknowledge that you were there last week. So we'll talk about championships. I know you're going to love this topic. Pinball Clemons wins his 8th Grey Cup. He did 3 as a player, 1 as a coach, 4 as an executive. What are your thoughts about Pinball Clemons?
I love him. And I don't know if you saw on my social media, I got a photo with Pinball Clemons at Saturday morning's Athletes in Action Christian breakfast. Pinball and I go back a really long ways. I called his games when he played. I called his last game. Listen, I could sit and talk about pinball forever, and I know you don't want me to, but he's from Clearwater, Florida, played at William and Mary. He went from playing 1 week to coaching the next. Head coach of the Toronto Argonauts, playing in Skydome. And I believe I broadcast both those games. I know I broadcast his first game as a head coach, and he's 8-0 in championship games. And here's this. He's about 5'6". His nickname's Pinball. He got the nickname from his coach, Bob Obilovich, in the 1980s with the Argos. He showed up, and he's like, who's this guy? It looks like a pinball. Back and forth. That's where the nickname came from. Okay. And I said to Pinball, who I've posed with him for dozens of photos over the years, Saturday morning, I said, Pinball, could you make my life by posing for a photo with me? I smiled, and he goes, only Jesus can do that, Rod. But sure, I'll do it. And he stopped, and we got a photo together Saturday morning. I love Pinball Clemons.
Well, listen, because you were there, and I was really curious, I actually watched the Grey Cup on
Awesome.
Sunday night. I watched the whole game, and you know the amazing part about it, when you know you have a great significant other like I do, she even watched the whole thing with
What'd you guys think? What'd you think?
I was entertained. I still like the 3 downs, but you know, it's a pretty good game. I was looking forward to it. You know, I saw the drama that Winnipeg was a favorite, and Toronto ended up winning the game. That second win in what 3 years, and I think
Yeah,
Winnipeg's been there what five
in a
five years
row.
in a row. Yeah, did they win any of those though? I mean, I
Yeah, they
don't.
won the first 2,
Okay,
and now they've lost the last 3. But I thought BC Place looked really great. The stadium holds 55,000. The Jonas Brothers at halftime were pretty good. I'm on a kick. I always have been that I think the halftime act should be Canadian for the Canadian Football League Championship. That drives people nuts. There's about a 50-50 response on that, but it was a lot of fun. It always is. I was real happy when I was told by my bosses that you're going to that thing.
well, I mean, I watched it on CBS Sports Network. I don't even think TSN even mentioned that the game was being carried in the United States on CBS Sports Network, because if they did, they should have. After all, you know, you're reaching our audience, and I enjoyed watching the game. I really thought it was kind of fun. It was a change of pace, to say the least. And you know, some of the rule changes where you got all these wide receivers running, where in most cases you think they're offside, but they're not in that league. So, you know, but it was pretty fun to watch. I really have to admit, I sat there and watched my first full Canadian Football League game. But again, I did. It was a championship game, and you're talking to a guy that's covered multiple Super Bowls. I know how long them halftime shows are. You know what I did with those halftime shows when I was covering the Super Bowl? I sat there and my colleagues, and we started talking about things that were going to happen in the second half. And you care about how long about that halftime show. But that's the mindset, Rod, that you get when you're covering a game of that magnitude. You don't worry about the fans and the act. We're figuring out what are we going to do next with the second half, and we prepare just like the players and everybody else. It's a different thing if, like, you know, yeah, I covered that game, Joshua Dorf from the couch. I guess it's fair enough to say. No, actually, from my master bedroom, but it's close enough in your terms. But still, you know, there's a different mindset when you're covering a championship game. And I told you before, Rod, okay, my goal is to get to a Canadian Football League championship game with you. And I'll tell you why. Because I will have covered 3 different championship games in 3 different leagues. I've covered 4 Super Bowls, covered the USFL championship game, and my goal is to go out there and take care of that. You know, George, I really don't have a trivia question tonight. I'll come up with more of one on Monday night on the Sports Exchange, because Rod and I have so much things that we have to catch up on. But I'm glad that you look forward to it, George, and I'll do my best to pop one in there on Monday for sure. So, yeah, I know, Josh. It's about that time where Scotty stuns Rod with the trivia question. No, Josh, it didn't happen tonight. I think I've stunned enough people with this audience that we're actually talking about the Grey Cup. I think I stunned myself and everybody else. But I think, to Rod's credit and the respect that he deserves, the man went across country to cover his Grey Cup. Let me ask you, how many Grey Cups have you covered?
I think this was 23.
Great stuff. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to ask you what your observations are on the 111th Grey Cup. You know, won by obviously the underdog Toronto Argonauts 41-24. Obviously, you know, their second Grey Cup win in 3 years. So give it to me.
It was a hell of a story. Winnipeg was favored by 10.5 points going into the game. They ended up losing. Toronto did it with a backup quarterback and what's a third-string quarterback, actually, by the name of Nick Arbuckle. He's a California kid who started the game for Toronto and won and was named the game MVP. Here's the thing. The final score was 41-24 Toronto, but it was a 1-point game going into the fourth quarter. If you remember, if you were watching, I think it was like 17-16. And Winnipeg's quarterback, Zach Collaros, Cincinnati Bearcats, great, gashed his finger. If you're watching it, you saw it. And they threw in the backup quarterback. He couldn't really get much done. And they put the number 1 guy back in, and he couldn't throw the ball. He threw 2 pick sixes, and it ended it. So it was kind of an anticlimactic ending to pretty big buildup and a decent game, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah. And I enjoyed it. It's hard when a quarterback suffers a hand injury, let alone in arguably the biggest game of his career. But when you see a guy like Nick Arbuckle actually win the MVP trophy, a guy that, you know, you didn't expect anything before, and as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't Chad Kelly the actual starter, but he went down in the championship game, and that's what led to Arbuckle.
The conference championship game, broke his ankle in the third quarter. Yeah, Jim Kelly's nephew. So you got it all, Scott.
Got to do my homework, Rod. Otherwise, I'll get run out of this business. That's for sure. So, but I'm glad you're there. Glad you're back home. And obviously, the main thing is you got a chance to talk to some of your colleagues out in Canada. I know Vancouver is one of the most beautiful cities I've ever been to. Yeah, I always like to go to Stanley. I went to Stanley Park when I was there. It was unbelievable. And their version of Chinatown is good as well. So let me ask you, any other final thoughts about what's going in the hockey world? We're going to have a stacked show on Monday. Just remember that, okay? But right now, what you see so far, I believe the Panthers are they playing tonight against Chicago at 8:30 Eastern time?
Yeah, and they are home to Colorado on Saturday night. Some of the best players in the National Hockey League will come through Sunrise on Saturday night. Nathan McKinnon, last year's league MVP, and Cale Makar, who's breaking Bobby Orr's records on defense for Colorado. So the Panthers are doing some great things. The Lightning are on a roll going into tonight, points in 4 straight games. They are at Columbus. I love writing the column for you guys. It makes me so happy to write for the South Florida Tribune. I know that there's readers all over North America reading the column because I had one small error in my column and my phone blew up from people all over North America that were reading that column. So I don't know what the numbers are for it, but they must be large. And this Ovechkin thing, I guess the latest news, he's Alex Ovechkin's 26 goals away from tying Wayne Gretzky. Serena's the biggest Wayne Gretzky fan on the planet. She thinks somebody needs to break Ovi's ankle. She didn't want to see him catch Gretzky. And news came out today. I think it's a month he's going to be out with a lower body injury. So she might have jinxed him. That's unfortunate. That might derail him catching Wayne. We all think that he will, but Scott, that's a huge record. The goals record, 894 for Wayne Gretzky. Ovechkin slowed up trying to tie him here.
Well, remember, Gordie Howe was the first record breaker for Gretzky, blew by him. So, I've always thought the greatest player I've ever seen was Gordie Howe. But then again, he played in a much more physical era. And I know that Joshua went ahead and brought that up a little bit about Ovechkin being out 4 to 6 weeks. Well, let me ask you a question. Josh alluded to it earlier. So while we have a few more minutes left to go in the broadcast, okay, Andrew Brunette, Barry Trotz is the new general manager. Do you think that Nashville could be making a coaching change, knowing that, hey, you know what, Brunette wasn't Trotz's guy and Trotz is idolized in Nashville, and he may want to bring in his own. I know Joshua was mentioning that to me on a FaceTime call today, so I'm going to bring it to your attention. Give me your thoughts on it.
I'm shocked they haven't fired Brunette yet. The first coach firing of the year was Boston, Jim Montgomery, on Monday. 8-9-3. They are tied for the final playoff spot in the East. I'm shocked Nashville wasn't the first team to fire their coach. And we debated this. Serena and I do the Cats and Bolts podcast. I know there's a million shows out there, as you know, but we do one every week on the Panthers and the Lightning. And we talked about this. And we think the only reason Nashville's general manager, Barry Trotz, hasn't made a coaching change is that Barry's been a coach and been fired twice, knows what it feels like. And I think Barry knows that Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault have been underperforming and doesn't feel like Brunette's the problem. Now, if this continues for even another week, I think he'll be fired. I'm with Joshua. I saw his comment. The next one will be Nashville. That's what we're all expecting.
All right. Josh mentioned some, but we're going to get into this in more detail on Monday, but we'll talk about it just briefly about the weird penalty that the Predators took because they inserted the wrong lineup. But we're going to talk more in detail, but just give me a basic thought as we'll have a lot more things to bite on Monday. Is that strange or what?
Well, it's the first I heard of it, but it also, I've seen it before. I've seen it in football. I've seen it in hockey. As a matter, I don't even know what the wrong lineup was. In football, we had a guy not included on the roster. He wasn't eligible to play because he wasn't on the roster. It's mistakes happen. We're human.
So if the audience wants a trivia question, I'm going to throw one at you guys.
All right.
What is the most goals scored by one player in a single NHL game, and who scored them, and what team was he on?
Daryl Sittler, 6. Toronto Maple Leafs?
No.
Mario Lemieux, 7.
No.
Okay. I'm out.
I'm not taking a stab at it, but
Joe Malone of the Montreal Canadiens holds the record for most goals scored in a single NHL game, a remarkable 8 on January 31st, 1920. This
No.
incredible feat was accomplished during a 10-2 victory over the Toronto St. Patrick's and remains unmatched.
Scott was at that game, I heard.
Seriously? 1920? Although my grandma Sophie was born then. Seriously?
They wanted a trivia question.
No. Hey, listen. I'm not.
That's a good one.
Hey,
that's a good one.
She gave it the audience what they want. I have no problem. Candy to the rescue. That's why they want her in this headphone instead of me. I have no problem with it. She gave you what you want, and I'll come up with one on Monday. But that was pretty good.
Good job, Candy. I liked it.
Good job, Candy. Our crack statistician not just cracking us with trivia that happened before her dad was alive. 1920. Well, we got it. And you'll have to hashtag that later because I forgot the name already, but I'll never forget the year. 1920. All right, folks, this is Fire Up Florida. My name is Scott Morgan, Motor City Madmouth. Please be joined by my co-host, Rod Peterson. Rod Peterson and I, every once in a while, do the Rod Peterson Show out in his studios out in Boca Raton, Florida. I know I'll be in there eventually when the situation presents itself, but he gets to put up with me once a week here on the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network. And more importantly, he has the best columns on the planet. This guy does some great work. If you haven't read his columns, what are you waiting for? This guy is good, and that's why we're glad to have him on our staff. And I should point out another announcement. I will be working on Lessons from the Microphone Part 2. My target to start outlining the book, folks, will be out in January is what my target is. I've been so buried with my football obligations, and I'm going to be taking a little bit of a break in December to do some things. Will come January, I'll be plowing away the best I can and trying to get a lot of other things rebooted as well. Meanwhile, that does it for Fire Up Florida, but we're not done yet because Mr. Peterson has a responsibility. And that responsibility is, Mr. Peterson, let everybody know how they get hold of you and get them all your shows, brother.
I appreciate it. Just at Rod Peterson right there. You see it on the screen. Just follow my Twitter, my Instagram, and all the links are everything there. South Florida Tribune, my columns, Fire Up Florida podcast, the daily Rod Peterson show, which is on national television in Canada, and the Cats and Bolts podcast with Serena, which we have so much fun. Thanks for the opportunity. Great to see you guys again.
Oh, great to see you too. Looking forward to having Serena on. If we can get it on there a little bit earlier to accommodate it. And I'm looking forward to you and I, Candy and Serena, having dinner sometime in the near future. But great stuff. I want to thank everybody in the chat room for chiming in. And of course, Jennifer Lee Cobb. I tell you, I can't say enough good things about her because there's the thing that's really special about her. There's a woman that obviously, fighting against Parkinson's disease, and Muhammad Ali was the guy that I got to interview, and he is in my book, Rod. And you know what? When Jennifer and I knew about Muhammad, we automatically clicked, and that's why every time I see her, my face lightens up, because obviously she's fighting for something that a lot of people should. And there's a lot of actors and actresses that are that I know have it. I think Michael J. Fox has it too, doesn't he? If I remember right. So, and the list goes on and on, but more power to Jen. But more power to the chat room. Josh Shador, on a night like this, you did pretty good, pal. George Bubras, you did really well as everybody else that contributed. So, with that said, cheers to you guys out in the chat room. Cheers to Rod Peterson. And I want to thank everybody for joining us. Like I said, Fire Up is that coming up after the broadcast. Candy Ebling will host that. You want to stick around for more. She does an awesome job. And Rod and I will do this again on Monday on the Sports Exchange. So on behalf of Rod Peterson, my name is Scott Morgan, Rock the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Fire Up Florida. Have a great weekend, everybody. We will see you Monday.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving, Candy, and everybody.